Hi, welcome back. We're starting The Cask of Amontillado today by Edgar Allan Poe. Actually, starting and finishing it. It's another short one. And let's see, you can find this one in your Abkarian book on page 1097, or again, it's widely available online and in libraries, that sort of thing. I also want to talk to you a little bit about body paragraphs today. So I think we'll start with that. Yesterday we talked about introductions and the three things you need to accomplish in an introduction. In the body paragraph, and there may be 2, 3, 4, 10 body paragraphs in your analytical essays. It's all the paragraphs between the introduction and conclusion. In those body paragraphs, there is a sort of format that you need to follow. And learn the format first, and then you can depart from it. First of all, the important thing about an analytical paper is that this is close reading. This is textual analysis. So you need to have quite a few quotes throughout this. I would say at least 2 quotes per body paragraph. Now, sometimes those are full sentences or multiple sentences. Sometimes it may be a shorter quote of a term or a word. But I'm just talking about the larger quotes. You need at least 2 of them on average, sometimes 3 or 4 per body paragraph. And the way it works is like this. In a typical body paragraph, you'd start with a topical sentence. This doesn't need to be a whole topic introduction sentence. It just needs to signal to the reader, here's where we are on that roadmap, that implied roadmap of the essay. Remember how I promised you we get into how he establishes a dark tone? So here we are, and your topic sentence will be a signal to the reader that that's where you are on the roadmap. It may even be just a part of the sentence. Soon after that, you need to, before you get to a quotation, we talked about how important that is. Before you get there, though, you need to introduce a quote and provide some context for it. So that means don't just drop in a quote, never start or end a paragraph with a quote, but instead say, as Joyce writes in the end to Araby, as the boy is walking through the bazaar, comma, and give us just a little idea where it came from within the text and who said it exactly, that kind of thing. So, introduce and provide context for the quote. Do the quote, formatted correctly with MLA style. And immediately thereafter, this is probably the most important part, immediately after the quote, analyze the text directly. That means picking it apart, sort of interrogating it, looking into not only what it says on the page, but also what it means, what it might lead you toward, what it sort of implies, this sort of thing. So it's almost an interrogation of that one little line of text, and you're trying to provide some analysis first to the reader. And finally, the fourth thing, we're back to our numbers here, the fourth thing is use that textual analysis to drive your bigger insights, the bigger meanings that you are trying to get at in terms of what you see in this text. So it's like you earn it. You earn your chance for the big, what Poe's trying to do is learn a new way to scare people. You earn that big insight with your smaller, more precise and targeted textual analysis of quotes that you've given us in a body paragraph. So, and then you repeat that. So to go back, we got a topical sentence. We have provide introduction and context to the quote, give the quote, immediately analyze the quote, and then I would go back to introduce and provide context for another quote, give that second quote, analyze that second quote. Now you've got 2 separate quotes and packs of textual analysis. Use that to drive your big insight at the end of your paragraph, where you're going somewhere a little different, where you think you're saying something new, something at least somewhat unique about what's going on in this text. That's your basic body paragraph, and you're going to repeat that throughout the body paragraph. So we talked about what you need to get done in your intro. This is what you need to get done in your various body paragraphs, and you should organize it. The big question that you should ask yourself is, how do I organize this? What body paragraphs do I need? Once you figure that out, you can now see the format of those body paragraphs, and that should work for you on almost anything. As you get better at this, as you've done more of it, you can change up the style and the format a little bit, but sort of keep that series in mind as you're doing body paragraphs. Okay, let's shift gears and go over to Cask of Amontillado. Now, Edgar Allan Poe, you could talk all day about his biography and his importance to literature. To give you a very brief idea of it, this is, he was born in the early, oh boy, I don't have it here, but I want to say something like 1810. Let's see if I can give you that quickly enough here. Here's Poe, and 1809, not bad, only one year off for me there. He did not live a very long life, but he did live a very interesting one. His parents, he was abandoned early. His parents died, and he was taken in by the Allen family, Allan. For some reason, people spell that wrong all the time, but it's Edgar Allan Poe. And he sort of enjoyed some of the benefits of a middle class life with them, even as he grew into interests that were not particularly traditional or middle class. He was very involved in what we might call hocus pocus, what others would call spiritual pursuits, from ESP to ghosts to the undead. And actually, he worked as a journalist in a variety of different literary magazines and journals. One of them was called, I believe it was called The Messenger in Richmond, and it was an anti-abolition or a pro-slavery journal. And yet Poe was the editor but didn't write much about slavery at all. He did not even seem to have particularly strong opinions about it. What he wanted to write about was, is ESP real? This type of thing. Along the way, he experimented a lot in some things that caught up with him later. Alcohol caught up with him as alcoholism. Ended up with syphilis. He was an opium addict. He also married his 13-year-old cousin, Virginia Clem, which at the time was probably a little less shocking than it would have been today. It wasn't quite as different than to marry a cousin or to marry a younger girl. Can hardly call her a woman at 13. But still, it made him a little bit of an outcast. And he was really best known as a poet. Poems like The Raven, but he's also sort of the progenitor of our detective novels, horror novels, mystery stories. He wrote across those genres. They weren't even called genres then. They were just creepy stories that people looked down on and thought of as sort of unworthy of the literary celebrities of the day. Fact is, of course, Poe is still read in those celebrities. We don't even know their name or read them anymore, most of them. So the genres that Poe did help start really have taken off. I personally am a big mystery reader. I love detective novels. I read horror. And we also see it in our movies and other popular media forms. Excuse me. With The Cask of Amontillado, you have a sort of strange little story. On one hand, Poe is well known for the Gothic, and this is an extremely Gothic story. I mean, we have two characters descending into a crypt that is webbed with nitrate and the bones of one man's ancestors. So this is sort of like the definition of a Gothic setting or place. We also have one character in Montresor who is something that characters at this time almost never were, which is pure evil. He's not exactly the devil, as we've seen in some other books at the time, but he is an evil sociopath whose family motto is "No one will harm us with impunity." A snake being crushed under a heel as it reaches up and bites the Achilles tendon of the boot that's crushing it. The man is wearing the boot. So the idea is any wrong you commit against us will be revenged, even if it's 50 years later. And this is a punishment for Montresor, for Fortunato many years after the original insult that seemed fairly minor to us. We have some of the hallmarks of the Gothic. We have a shadowy conspiracy with the Masons, as well as two different versions of Masonry. On one hand, we have the stonemasons, this idea that there's a shadowy cabal of American elites controlling everything that happens in our country. Still a popular idea 150, 160 years later. But also, the masonry that goes on is that Fortunato is cuffed into a wall and then bricked in and buried alive, like a mason would do. There's brickwork here. So there's a double meaning to the Masons, of course. That pure evil, that the joy he takes in, that Montresor takes in revenge, is sort of a hallmark of horror today. And I think it was shocking to readers at the time when it came out. So look into that. How does Poe develop the Gothic in terms of the atmosphere, the setting, the history of the story? But also, how does he develop this study of the nature of evil, of sociopath, of murder? This is as much as our character. Again, we're in first person, and it's very important that we are in first person because this character has no perspective, no idea that what he is doing is in fact the bad or evil thing. He is insane, but in a crazy like a fox kind of way that he sees this revenge as a justified moral endeavor. When we as the reader don't see it as such, we have, for us, it's more like a peek into the mind of the madman. And that's disconcerting, especially when you've never seen it before. It's like when you read Poe now, it may seem dated. It may feel like, oh, a lot of people have done this. And it's true. They followed Poe. They did it after he did it. And some of them have done it better, I will admit. But try to keep in mind that he is writing this out of thin air. He is not reading a bunch of mystery novels and seeing how to do it from people before he does it. He's just making this up from his own fascinating mind. So maybe give him a little bit of extra slack on the suspense. Another big part of this, of course, is the suspense. In this case, we know that doom awaits Fortunato, but we wonder, when is he going to be saved? When will this be stopped? When will something change? When will the good guys win? But this is Poe. The good guys don't win. Fortunato does not escape. Fortunato is buried alive. And that's what we're left with. So it is a whole different way of telling a story, especially in first person from within the mind of that skewed or disturbed character. Something much more gothic about that than even a crypt filled with bones, is to see this revenge played out. That's our very brief look at the Cask of Amontillado. I'll join you on the blogs. There's a lot to say about this one, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Email me at lavertyr@uncw.edu, or get in touch with me another way, and call me, or I'll see you on the blogs. Have a great day, and I'll come back tomorrow with our next reading, which is Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper, one of my personal favorites. I think you'll enjoy as well.